All right, so this is probably one of the most interesting subjects that changed my whole understanding of farming. And someone asked me once, who feeds the forest? Who feeds the forest? What makes the forest grow? Because I've been feeding fruit trees, and as farmers, we feed our crops, whatever they are, whether it's wheat, whether it's apple trees, raspberries, doesn't matter what you're growing, we're feeding them. But who feeds the forest? Nature. There's a natural system going there. We've got places like China, and well, before industrial farming, people were subsistence farming for thousands of years, growing crops on the same land year after year after year. No problem. Industrial farming comes along, and within a generation, they're depleted. So what happened was a generation or so ago, some people started having a look in the forest to how that functioned. How does this grow? What mechanisms are happening here for things to grow? So they started studying, and they came up with the term forest edge ecology. And they found out that there was a lot of life in these soils. So they went to these bio hotspots, they call it, and one of them was in Oregon and America, Pacific Northwest, where the rainforests are incredible. You know, we've got them all over the world. We've got these bio hotspots. There's a lot of life. As the trees grow, things just grow very naturally. And they started studying that. And one of these persons was a lady called Elaine Ingham. Some of you may have heard of it, Dr. Elaine Ingham. And she came up with a concept of what's called the soil food web. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, because there's this life, and that is, good soil has life. And if it doesn't have life, it's just dirt. We're farming in dirt. Okay, so if you come into most farms, most orchards, they're just in dirt. There's no life in it. We've sterilised it through through chemicals, chemical fertiliser, a mechanical. Every time you plough, you're destroying life. All right, so this is a whole new concept of understanding. Are we feeding the plants, or are we feeding the soil? So let's get started. All right, I'm going to stand over here because so here's a rainforest with this. Might want to turn that down a little bit too, I think. Look at that. We've got a beautiful big tree. We've got a lot going on there. It's not a monoculture, is it? Who feeds that? It's all self-sustaining. There's systems in the ground that are perpetuating life, that are feeding. There's nutrient cycling going on in the ground that can, and there's each plant is contributing to that system. Each plant has its own biome and their own nutrients that they make, and there's all these different biology, just hundreds and thousands of species that are all contributing to make that life happen. It's all interconnected to the point where they're communicating with each other. They've now worked out that all those plants are communicating. Their root systems are all communicating. It's absolutely remarkable. It is astonishing. So now we've got the James Webb Telescope looking into space, saying, wow, there's a lot more going on up there than what we thought. Well, we've got microscopes that can go further and further and further, thousands and thousands and thousands of time, and they're realizing, wow, there's a lot more going on under our feet than what we ever realized. It is astonishing. And it's, so the technology is growing all the time. The understanding is developing all the time. It's fascinating, thoroughly fascinating. So why aren't we fitting it on there? I don't know. So what are soils made of? And there's a chart. Hope most of you can see that, yeah? So good soil, this is good soils. We've got air in it. All right, so you've got a lot of air in that soil, air pockets made through worm tunnels and root dying and just the activity of the biology is making air, water, and mineral particles. Humus, we mentioned humus before, we'll describe what humus is a bit later, and roots, of course, and organisms. So 10% organisms. So like I'm saying, in our modern systems, there's a complete absence of organisms and humus, organic matter. So that's healthy soil. It should be around 10% organic matter. All right, so plants are autotrophic, self-feeding. So photosynthesis. So what's that? Leaves of solar panels. So they're taking what? Carbon dioxide out of the sky. So carbon dioxide isn't always the enemy. And sunlight, and they convert that into sugar basically. And then that's moved through. Some of it's used to make new tree, new plant. Others of it is used for cycling minerals. So they make this simple glucose and they send it down into the roots. And those, it's called exudates. Okay, carbohydrates. All right, so if you add carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, you end up with, in different forms, you end up with different types of sugars. Okay, and they exudates through the root zone, which attracts this microbiology, which we're going to see bit by bit. Mainly bacteria. Bacteria feeds on sugar. Okay, so this biology is attracted to these roots, and this is where it gets interesting. It's where the trading starts happening. All right, so this is the soil food web, and I don't know why it's not fitting on there. But basically, we've got our plants. You can see here, your roots and your shoots. Your photosynthesis happens, all the sugar comes down through those roots. You've got, as the plant dies or shed leaves, as it grows, it's leaving organic matter on the ground, leaves, debris, sticks, branches. We call that residue, all right? That residue, that decomposes through the form of bacteria. Okay, so bacteria, they break down soft tissue like cellulose, the leaves, the green leaves, the soft stuff. Okay, so bacteria multiply very quickly in the right conditions. They feed on that cellulose, which is basically a carbohydrate, a simple carbohydrate. You ever seen a roadkill? Because we see it in the country all the time. A kangaroo gets hit, it's on the side of the road. You come back a month later and what's happened? It's like it's dissolved away. That's bacteria. They'll dissolve flesh because it's a soft tissue. You know, they'll dissolve the proteins, and that's what they eat. They eat that. But it just disappears, and all you're left with is bones and skin. You come back a few months later, and what have you got around that? Grass. You've got a biological hotspot all of a sudden, and what grows back there? Very lush grass. Or weeds or whatever, usually grass. It's not always weeds, it'll be grass, a higher species. So it's interesting. So you're creating a biological hotspot. So whenever you've got something on your surface, leaves, compost, food for plants, particularly decomposing grass clippings, the first thing to move in is bacteria. They're the simple species, they come in first. Now, the fungi, you'll see above that, they break down the harder stuff, the lignin, the bark, the sticks, the wood chips. So they go to work on that. So they work by their filaments. So they extend themselves out. So when you see a mushroom, that's the flower of the fungi. Okay, that's a flower above ground. That means there's this whole system underground, and they're attaching themselves to these woody substances. And as they sort of crawl along it with their filaments, they release enzymes which break down the material, and then they absorb it back into their bodies. And they sort of crawl along, and you'll see this white little, it's called hyphae, all right? And hopefully we'll find some in the garden. We just got to scratch down, we'll be able to find some. So we'll see some pictures today. So fungi, so they break down the harder stuff. All right, now in those fungi contain all the minerals and all the substances needed for plant life, trees particularly. If you're planting fruit trees, you need a fungal dominant system. If you want vegetables and if you want weeds or other plants, then you want more of a bacterial system. All right? But what happens there is, so they're decomposing. That's their job. The fungi and the bacteria, their job is to decompose the product, turn it into, turn a kangaroo into, they call it fixed mainly nitrogen. A lot of it's nitrogen, or whatever that was, it's inside their bodies. Then these other substances, you'll see protozoa, nematodes, worms, they come along and eat the bacteria and the fungi. And as they eat their substance, they release what they are, what the fungi, what they're composed of, into nutrients where? Right at the root zone. So if your bacteria are attracted to the sugars on the roots, and so a protozoa comes along and eats a bacteria around the roots, where is the nutrient going to be released? At the roots. Happy days for the plant. You see, the plant gives the sugar, that attracts the bacteria, and then the bacteria is attracted, the protozoa is attracted to the bacteria. Nematodes eat bacteria, they eat fungi, they eat each other. And as they all get eaten, they're releasing the nutrients into the system. Again, that's the nutrient cycling going on. So you must start with the sugar in the plant. So you need, if you've got high functioning plants that are photosynthesizing really well, they're going to release a lot of sugar into the plant, and they call it the liquid carbon pathway. So they're taking carbon out of the atmosphere, sending it down into the roots, then that attracts the bacteria, then it attracts the other species, and then this cycle continues. All right? That's why it just goes around in circles. There's other things with bigger nematodes, bigger worms. Worms eat organic matter because the bacteria are attached to the organic matter, trying to break it down. So in a worm farm, you put in your food scraps. The bacteria are feeding on the scraps. The worms eat the scraps because of the bacteria. They want to eat the bacteria. That's their food source. They're not interested in the rotting lettuce. They want the bacteria that's breaking down the lettuce. You can't see it, but this is what's happening. This is the actual reality of what's happening in the soil, in good soil. So we need healthy functioning, make sure photosynthesis. Now, to have healthy functioning plants, you need to have the right minerals. So that's why sometimes we help things along by adding minerals. All right, so when we see in the garden, we might need to give the plants a bit of a help along. We're speeding up the decomposition when we add sugar. So if you put sugar in a watering can and feed your roots, guess what's going to be attracted around the roots? More bacteria. When you bring in bacteria and fungi, the others will come. They'll just come. You might, in your first soil test, if you look in a microscope, you're not going to see them. But they're there. They'll come. But in good quality compost, all those things exist. In good quality compost, you're going to have fungi. You're going to have fungal spores. You're going to have bacteria, and they might be dormant and they might be active, but they'll be there. There'll be nematodes. There might be the eggs of the nematodes if they're not living, but the eggs will be there. The protozoa, they'll be there, and they multiply. When we feed the system, so when we feed the soil, and that's what we'll talk about later, feeding the soil or feeding the plants. Sometimes we've got to feed the plants to help them along, and this perpetuates this whole system. So, you know, when you get a bacterial infection, what do they tell you not to eat? Sugar. Sugar feeds bacteria. So if you've got a bacterial infection, you've got to stay away from sugary drinks, sugary food. All right? It's the same in the soil. We want to actually feed the bacteria. So these bacteria are good. They're decomposers. They've got to think. Okay, so in healthy soil, you see there's a lot of worms, there's a lot of bacteria, there's a lot of fungi, a lot of protozoa, a lot of nematodes. You had no idea, did you, when you're walking in the forest, this is what you're walking on. Walking on life, a living organism, okay? And that's, you look under a microscope, that's what they are. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing all kinds of little creatures We just thought there were earthworms there, didn't we? We knew that earthworms were good for soil, but you're not going to get earthworms unless you've got bacteria. So having earthworms in your soil means it's a good thing. It means you've got life there. If you've got them around your fruit trees, it isn't necessarily a good thing because you don't want a bacterial dominant soil. You need a fungal dominant soil for trees. But if you're in your veggie garden, so we had a speaker come talk to growers, this is many years ago when I was learning all this, and she said to us, if you've got more than 30 worms per square foot, so you dig up and get a spade, 300 by 300, right? Dig a square, count the worms in there. So I went home, I couldn't wait to get home, and I dug up the spade. I had 85 in this one patch in my orchard. It was thumbs up. So I won Worm of the Week award. So it was really fantastic. But it wasn't always a good thing because we'd been feeding our soils bacterial food in an orchard, which is not a good thing. We should have been giving them fungal food. This is something, the mentality you'll see as we go along. All right, so bacteria breaks down organic matter, fixes nitrogen. So that's the main thing that bacteria are, they're nitrogen, which is a good thing. So they can, there's different types, rhizobiums and nitrobacters. There's, you know, the atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. There's bacteria, Azobacter, that take nitrogen from the air and put it in the roots. Free nitrogen. Just got to get the right species in your soil. So, you know, we haven't got time to look at that, but, you know, we know that planting things like lupins and peas, broad beans, they got that Azobacter and they take the nitrogen from the atmosphere and attach it to their roots. So you want to be putting these in your soil if you're going to be planting things you want to grow fast, you know, your green leafy crops, you put in them first, or in a resting soil. That's what you're doing. So in the olden days before fertilizer, they used to plant lupins in the orchard. Lupins all the way through. You know, they used to grow that high, then they'd plough them in. It's regenerative farming. That's what my grandfather and great-grandfather used to do. But, oh, we've got urea now. We go out with a tractor and poison everything. So we've lost the art of growing things. So that's what bacteria looks like really, really close up. You've got the rod bacteria, they're nitrogen fixers. The others are decomposers, all kinds of, they're all doing a role. Not sure what that's on though, it's in soil. All right, so this is an interesting picture. So if you go into the garden, we can do it later, and if there's healthy soil, you can pull it up, and these roots, the dirt sticks to the roots, right? You ever pulled weeds out and all the dirt sticks to it? That's a good sign. That's all the sugars from the plant attracting the bacteria, and they call it the Rastafarian. If you look at these roots, they look like Rastafarian dreadlocks. No, they look like dreadlocks. That's a good thing because that means you've got these sugars sticking to the roots and the bacteria, and they're creating what's called structure. So if you pull your roots up and there's no dirt stuck to it and it's all just white roots, you've got nothing happening. Okay? So plants, that's a healthy, just an oat plant. Well, that's what you want to see. When you dig it up and all those dirty roots, that's really, really good. It's a good sign. All right, so this is called soil structure. So you've got a lot going on there. We've got roots in there, we've got a worm in there, and there's little holes all through it. So you've got your minerals, you've got grains of sand or rocks or whatever particles you've got. Then you've got biology and all these sugars all holding it together. So when you dig in your soil, it should be a clump in your hand. It shouldn't just all fall out of your hand like sand does. It should be like, not like clay. Clay's held together differently through charge.
What's your comments on hydroponics where there's none of that sort
Yeah,
stuck around?
Exactly. So how does the plant get its food? Through the water. It's just minerals. There's no soil structure. There's no biology. They are learning to put biology through the water too, by the way. This is new technology they're working out. Still, jury's out for me on that. Soil structure is really important. Biology is really important because biology are turning on enzymes and mechanisms in the plant which activate things like flavors, which autoimmune, in the plant, which in a hydroponic or an industrial system just aren't happening. So we've got diseased plants, trees and plants that have got no natural immune system. This way, it's all happening. The biology is communicating with the roots, and they're switching on. They're finding a switching on the immune systems in the plant. They make themselves resistant to pests and diseases. It's called quorum sensing. There's actually a whole talk on it. It's remarkable. And we can have that too in our own body. If you have a certain amount of biology, diverse biology in your guts, your body will switch on certain autoimmune mechanisms so that you pretty much won't get sick. They're now doing fecal transplants with people with a healthy biome. That sounds horrible, but it's curing all kinds of lifestyle diseases. Okay, so you've got to have a diverse plant-based diet. Diverse plant-based diet will give you a healthy biome, healthy stomach biome. That's not to say you can't eat meat, but you don't get the biology when you eat meat. All right, so that's called a slaking test. So good healthy soil that's got structure, that's sitting in water in a bit of mesh. See how it's not dissolving? It's holding together. That's exactly what we want. The other side is just a clump of dirt and it's all just falling apart. It's called a slaking test. It's very interesting. All right, so there's healthy soil that's been built up over the years. We see a rock or a clay layer, but all the years and years of root exudates, if you like, creating carbon in the soil, the carbon sink. The liquid carbon pathway, taking carbon dioxide, turning that into simple sugars, releasing it, then the biology grows and it creates humus in the soil. That's how soil is built. It's the quickest way to build soil. Quickest way to build soil is get lots of biology, lots of good photosynthesis. So this is a fairly fresh sheep poo from my orchard because we had sheep grazing through the farm, and that's biology living on there. So you see the little yellow things, I don't know what they are, they're like little yeasts. Okay, so they're living organisms, and those little white filaments, that's actinomycetes, so it's a nitrogen fixing. So they're decomposing that manure, and they'll turn that into more and more biology, and that'll dissolve into the soil and become plant available. When something eats them, it becomes available to the plants immediately in that zone. All right, back to the soil food. I think we're going to look at fungi. No, protozoa. We're going to have a look at protozoa. So there's different types: ciliates, amoeba, flagellates. Anyone who remembers a bit of science from school? I remember amoeba. Didn't pay too much attention at school. I wish I did. I really wish I did. I really wished I paid attention at school because I'm learning more now as an adult. I wish I didn't muck around. So, yeah, and they eat bacteria. So you can actually see in the body of the ciliates there and the flagellates, you can see those little dots. They're bacteria. And then they get excreted out. So they get digested and excreted out as pure nutrient. Where? At the root zone. Okay. And the next one we're going to look at is fungi, heterotrophs. They cannot manufacture its own food. Okay, so it relies on other organisms. So we've got three types. Saprobic, which absorbs nutrients through a complex change of enzymes. So they crawl along, send their filaments along the material, the bark or the wood, and then they release enzymes and then they absorb it back into their bodies. Now the mutualistic ones are very interesting. Anyone heard of mycorrhizae? So they have a relationship with the plant. So they attach themselves to the root and they communicate with the plant. This is incredible, where the plant says, I need some phosphorus. And the fungi says, I'm good at that. So he goes out looking for phosphorus, brings it back to the plant, and then in return, he gets the sugars or food that he wants. So they're trading. So I think we've got a picture of a mycorrhizae coming up where it can extend the root system by over 100%. So whatever the roots are there, they attach themselves and you can double the root area. So the capacity of the root zone doubles because of this fungi. So we add that to our soils. Parasitic fungi, they're the bad guys, so they're actually feeding. They're the ones we know of that kill our trees and plants. And, you know, they're there, but they normally get eaten by other things. They normally get eaten by nematodes in a healthy system. All right, so there's the hyphae and those filaments on a bit of wood, and they're just extending out. They release their enzymes. We've even got the flower, so that's a pretty special little picture. I was out cutting wood one day and saw that. I thought I need to take a picture. But that's pretty much how it works. It does. It's a bit like a spider web. It is. It's just these little web, and it just extends out, and over time it'll eventually break down that wood. It might take many, many, many years for that to break jarrah down. Softwoods. So we have hardwoods here in Western Australia in our forest, but softwoods are better. Your birches, your maples, things like that. Sort of those deciduous trees, fruit trees, deciduous trees. Avocados, they're very soft. They break down quite quickly with fungi. That's a little mushroom. So that's the flower. That's the flower of the fungi. So the fungi is all underground. So that network of hyphae, you see the filaments, the whole ground is full of it. We're walking on it. And those mushrooms that come up, that's just the flower. All right, which I like to eat some of them.
So do they grow in cardboard?
In what? Cardboard? No. Cardboard's fairly inert.
And I get a lot of lacy type mushrooms in there.
Okay, well there must be something on there, that on the cardboard. So the question was, do they grow in cardboard? Well, it depends if the cardboard has an inoculant on there. We see here a really good example of diversity. Different types of mushroom, different colours. So when you see colours, that's good. The colourful fungi are healthy. It might not be healthy for us to eat, but that's a good sign of a healthy system. So this was just a bit of wood growing in the forest, and all those fungi are all decomposing. Eventually they'll break that bit of wood down. It will take many years, but that's what will happen.
Question.
Yep.
The tree has tannin in it.
Tannin?
The flower, yeah, the flower
Yes.
will go the same colour as like tannin in the
So if there's tannin, which is tannins in nature, yeah, in our woods, yep.
that's one reason I like.
Okay, so will tannin come out in the mushroom?
Yeah.
Possibly, I don't know. So look, when you go through the forest in May, around May, early June, while the soil's still warm, we see these mushrooms, okay? They're beautiful. This is nature. You know, there's different, these are just photos that I've taken, different colours.
Take them in my lawn.
Yeah, see, different shapes. They're all decomposing wood underground. You see, where are they? They're sitting on the forest floor. They're decomposing those bits of wood and bark, all right? They're breaking that down. Look at that, they're fascinating. All different shapes and sizes.
Are they good in the lawn?
They're good in your lawn. If you've got in your lawn, you've got a living system in your lawn. There's something good going on there. All right, nematodes. Nematodes, there's different types of nematodes. Some eat bacteria, some eat fungus, some eat roots, some eat each other, and some eat all of the above, eat anything. They're all good except for the root feeder. So the root feeders proliferate when we use chemicals and we kill off all the other stuff. All right, they're the ones that we're used to, and now we use nemicides to sterilise the soil. Okay, we're really in a healthy system. They're cycling nutrients by eating bacteria. We see a bacterial feeder there. How can you tell? Because he's got bacteria inside his guts. And he'll excrete that out as pure nitrogen around the root zone. So it's all very interesting. But how do we turn that into... So I told you the worm story. So that was the actual 85 worms. Okay. That was under a big patch of kikuyu too. All right, so plant succession. So if we went and cleared a patch, if we got a bulldozer outside there today and just cleared and got it back to sand, got it back to sand, got rid of all the kikuyu, everything was gone, and just left it, what would come back first? The first thing would be mosses and lichen, because they're pioneer species, they call them. So That's why the evolutionists say the first plants on Earth weren't real plants, they were mosses and lichens. Okay, they're simple species, not really plants, their own species. But the basic weeds, those little weak weeds come first, and those prickles, and they're the ones, because nature's trying to start again. It's trying to build its own system, and it will start with whatever it can extract out of that sand. All right, and then if you just left that for a while, it gradually builds up a little bit more, then bigger plants, bigger weeds, new weeds come in. But we see it improves all the time. By the time we get to a forest situation, it's very fungal dominated. There's a bit of bacteria. There's always bacteria, but the fungi, if you want trees, that tells us we need lots of fungi in the soil. Good fungi. And that's what happens as we develop it. So we need to improve our soil to help this along. We've degenerated our soil so much. And every time we dig, every time we spray, every time we break up. So that's why they say we shouldn't dig our garden beds, because you're breaking up that structure that's been created. Does that make sense? Yeah? That's why you've heard this term no dig. So if we're going to dig, we've got to do it as minimal as possible. We want to use things like a pitchfork or a broad fork, which have prongs far apart, and you can lift, and that will help oxygenate and aerate the soil. That's really good. And it helps get minerals down further. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're establishing your garden for the first time, then there's no problem with digging, because there's nothing there anyway. So you can dig it right in, you can rotary hoe it and get it all good. But once you've established your soil bed, your garden beds, you really don't want to be touching it. You just want to be improving it by adding things that feed fungi and bacteria, because then everything else will just happen. And that's when we'll talk about feeding soil or feeding plants. All right, does anyone see anything in this picture? Dandelions, yep, cape weed, actually. Hey?
And a dead tree.
You see a dead tree. What do you notice under the tree compared to elsewhere? No flowers. You've actually got some healthy growing plants in there, a higher species in there. So that's where you've got your oats and other things growing, because under the tree, you've got a living system. You've got roots and things living on the roots. So weeds don't grow in a healthy system. You ever see weeds grow in the bush? They can't. Weeds want hungry soil. They want impoverished soil. They don't like good conditions, particularly fungal dominant conditions. It's interesting. If you're in your orchard, so the more fungi you can get on your soil, you'll start eliminating weeds. It's interesting, isn't it? Interesting, where if you have a lot of bacteria, weeds love bacteria because there's a lot of nitrate, a lot of nitrogen. Okay, so that around the tree, there's a lot of fungi growing. There's a natural system, whereas the farmers probably ploughed around those other areas outside and disturbed the ground. It's hungry ground, it's weak ground, so just weeds grow. Just a living example. All right, so this is what we do. This is how we disturb the soil. Pesticides, we don't use aeroplanes, but there's obviously places that do. Herbicides, fungicides, soluble fertilisers, even driving our tractors and vehicles on the ground compacts the ground and makes it hard. It all interferes. Rotary hoeing, we all love a rotary hoe in our garden, and it makes things nice and soft and that, but we're destroying life. Like if you're doing it to the initial preparation, maybe like he's doing there, that's okay. But after this, you don't want to be doing it. After you've established it and put your amendments in and incorporated them, park the rotary hoe up. So this is a backyard orchard in my house a number of years ago. I was living in Manjimup. You see the fruit trees are only probably in their second year. And what have I got happening under the... They're not weeds. Lots of species. There's no weeds in there. No, there's no weeds there. They're all herbs. They're all herbs.
In between the bushes.
There's no weeds in there. On the front there might be. On the front there will be, because that was my lawn. But under the trees you've got wood chips And then I planted, you see, calendula. I've got broad beans. Why have I got broad beans there? Nitrogen, because they're taking nitrogen from the air and fixing it in the soil, on the roots, right in the root zone where the fruit tree is. So I grow broad beans and peas and stuff around my fruit trees. Okay. The other herbs, I've got, the best thing you could plant is comfrey. Comfrey. Anyone heard of comfrey? It's really important because it sends its roots really deep and it pulls up minerals, particularly calcium, and then it releases them around the root zones of, it leaches, it exudes all that stuff, all those minerals out around the root zones of your tree. So that's called companion planting.
So it's okay to grow comfrey.
You want comfrey near your fruit trees.
I thought they were sucking a lot of nutrients.
No, they're doing the opposite. They're not sucking out. None of them are sucking out. They're all sharing. They're communicating and sharing. There's no sucking out. They're not stealing. They're helping each other. They're supporting each other. They don't steal. Comfrey's got a long sort of narrow leaf up to about that big, probably about that wide. Sort of just comes out of the ground. It's very medicinal. It's really good for you. It's been declared a weed because it's so valuable to agriculture and medicinally. You've got to be careful with it medicinally, but it is so valuable that they've declared it a weed. They don't want you to have it. So how do we feed fungi? This is one thing. So this is called fish hydrolysate. So you've heard of fish emulsion? Yeah, that Charlie Carp and different things you get from Bunnings. So that's plant food. So all the nutrients in the fish. So basically the fish is boiled. It's the carp or whatever. It's a waste product. And they just boil up the fish, bottle it up, and away you go. You've got fish food. So whatever nutrients, and it's good stuff. You've got sea minerals in there. You've got a bit of nitrogen, phosphorus. It's good fertilizer, good plant food. But with fish hydrolysate, what they do, and I'm making it at home now, so you get fish carcasses, so we obviously fillet the fish, keep the fillet for yourself, then we put it in a bucket of water with some sugar, and it ferments. You can put some lactobacillus in there as well to help it ferment more, and then it basically, over a period of 6 months, breaks down into a liquid. You're left with nothing other than liquid. That, and you get what the benefit there is. The best food for feeding fungi is lipids and oils. And fish oil is the best.
Is this similar to sea salt?
No, sea salt is completely different. I'll talk about sea salt.
Can you get that from Bunnings?
This stuff here, there's another brand. So generally Bunnings don't stock fish hydrolysate. They'll have fish emulsion. Completely different. It's those oils. So when they boil the fish, they skim the oils off and then sell it to you as capsules. Okay, it goes to medicinal stuff, but we need those oils it's the best fungal food. So commercially, we use it in the orchard. We use fish hydrolysate by the 1,000-litre shuttle.
So where would you purchase?
Where would you get it? You'd have to look for, so there's a product called Biofish, and you'd have to look for selected outlets, Mitre 10s and any hardware but Bunnings, pretty much.
Is this applied as a foliar feed or?
In the ground. You're feeding the soil, remember? Not the plant. You can use it on the leaves, but you're better off feeding the soil. Yep.
Sandpeak is in Fremantle. They can do 20 litres containers.
There you go. Yes, that's the one.
How about some of
Yeah, so what else we got? So this is the outcome. There's those big cherries I told you about. They're 32 millimetres. Tastes like nothing you've ever eaten before, but this is what can be achieved. You get a whole different outcome. When you farm this way, there's a whole different outcome. So I'm giving you an alternative, and it's a farming alternative for us that very few farmers do because it takes a bit of education, takes a bit of work and expense. That fish hydrolysate isn't cheap. It's about $25 a litre, but you only need a capful in a 9-litre container at a time. Okay. Humus is another important food. Wood chips, all those fungi, they're all going to do that. Good quality compost. is really, really important too, full of fungi. Where do you get good quality compost? That's hard.
Sands and soil.
Probably not sands and soils.
That's what I don't know.
Definitely not Bunnings. You're going to have to source that yourself. I know biosoils in Bass do the best, but it's a bit far for you guys. But there might be some waste facility site. Making your own is obviously ideal if you can do that. We can talk about how to do that a bit later on. But that's pretty much the end of this presentation. You know, there's some nice tomatoes. Who likes tomatoes? Things taste better because the biological activity are turning on mechanisms in the plant and signaling in the plant that are making food real. You know, tastes called terpenes, you know, these things, that makes the tastes in food. We're missing that. You eat your tomatoes and your cucumbers and the lettuces that you buy, got no flavours because they're grown hydroponically. There's no biological activity happening at all.
Sorry, I put wood chips on my avocado trees base as a mount.
Yeah, very good.
But the leaves turn like a chloride burn type of symptom.
Okay, so what can happen if you go wood chips? If their wood chips are green, they'll draw nitrogen out of the soil to break the wood chip down. So you need aged wood chips if you can.
But once added, I can't do anything.
Bit late now. Well, you can add a bit of food for the plant. Obviously, the plant needs a bit of help. Feed the soil, a bit more fish, bit of fish. Now, someone asked about sea salt. Seaweed's really good. Seaweed is full of, the ocean is full of minerals, lots and lots of minerals. Seaweed is the fastest growing plant on earth. It can grow up to 40 centimetres a day. So there's lots of plant hormones in there, which are really beneficial. And the trouble is with the process of making seaweed, processing it for us to use, a lot of the enzymes are lost and you end up with the minerals that are the sea minerals, which are really good. So sea salt is basically seaweed cordial. So what they do, they put a little bit of seaweed in the container and fill it up with water. You're better off buying seaweed powder and making your own. Absolutely. Don't buy sea salt, I'm sorry. You bought some sea salt, didn't you? Yeah, look, sea salt's good, but you're just buying a quarter. You're watered down seaweed is what you're buying. You're better off buying the powder, which you can at Bunnings or other hardware, and make your own. Don't get seaweed from the ocean. Okay, so worm juice is different again. So worms process all those plants and break it down. And so what you're getting is there's no biology. It's a very inert substance, what they pee, but it's what the plants were. So it's full of minerals. It's one of the most perfect plant foods there is. If you can have a worm farm, that's one of the best things you can feed your plants. Okay? Seaweed is really good because it's a stimulant, particularly when a plant's got stress, but you've got to get the right source of seaweed. All right? Question?
So you said don't get seaweed from the beach. Is that
Okay.
because it's illegal or is it because...
Yeah, well, partly because it's illegal, but the seaweed, you don't want seagrass. Seagrass is full of iodine. What do we put on cuts and sores? Iodine, because it kills bacteria. I learnt this the hard way. I went, because Bostleton, as Clark would know, has got a lot of seaweed on the beach in winter. I'm thinking, free seaweed, yes. So I brought it home and put it that deep all over my garden, and it killed it. Nothing grew. My biological system died, and I did not know for years why, because the rest of my garden beds where I didn't do it were fine. It was just here, and it didn't grow. My cabbages only got that high. I'm putting all my amendments on. And then I worked out one day that seagrass is full of iodine. That's that brown substance, why it's brown. And it's like, I've just sterilised my garden beds. Only one garden bed. So I learnt the hard way. There's kelp. So what they use is kelp, the long, really thick stuff. And they dehydrate that. But even in the process of doing it, the extracting of it destroys a lot of it. We can't get pure seaweed. But yeah, using that in its pure form, it won't break down. So it needs to be processed into a powder. So you're better off just buying seaweed powder and dissolving it, making your own.
Powder has a big, wider spectrum of the.
It's better. It's much better. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's more cost efficient, more than anything. Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's still good. Yeah. So seaweed has its place. It's a stimulant. It's a biostimulant. It doesn't help the biology a lot, but it helps the plant a lot. It's more for the plant. Think of seaweed for the plant, worms for the plant. But if you want to feed your fungi and your bacteria, molasses. Molasses is really good to feed your plants, to feed the soil, because it feeds bacteria. And molasses has minerals in it, a lot of minerals in it. So you can use white sugar, but you can use molasses. It's better. It's got more minerals in it, so the plant's getting the minerals. Yes. And there's molasses on our chook food. We buy this chook food, chook pellets, and it's got molasses on it, and it's got minerals in it. So molasses is a fairly cheap product, but it's feeding bacteria, remember? It's a sugar. It's going to feed your bacteria. So very good in the vegetable garden.
But you have to use very lightly or very
So the thing about molasses, it's quite strong.
Yeah.
So in a 9 litre container, watering can, you'd only want to use a tablespoon. So don't put half a cup full like a lot of them tell you to.
But that's only for vegetables, not so much for fruit.
I would use it more on vegetables because you want more bacteria. But on vegetables, you want to be trying to get the fish if you can, and compost. Fish, compost, and breaking down wood chips.
So what if you had fish carcasses?
Yep.
And you put them into, say, potting mix and leave it to...
Yeah, that can work. So don't use potty mix. Go get some good soil, get some compost. So the question was, if I had fish carcasses and put them in potty mix, don't use potty mix because potty mix is sterile. So nothing will break that down. You need to help. All right? So you need to get some compost, and it's out there in the garden, or go into the forest and get some soil from the surface. That's full of biology.
What if you just dug a hole and stuck the fish bones in the garden?
Yeah, well, I know people that do that, and that will work eventually, slowly. It's all good. So fish should be incorporated, but ideally it's those oils that's going to feed the fungi. Yeah, but fish, like I don't know who worked that out, because it seems like a strange thing to do is put fish on your plants, but it really works very well. All right, I think, how are we going? We'll have lunch, I think.